My home is in outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Born and raised there. Born February 11th, 1919. So when I'm talking about some of the things that I do talk about, I'll know that I lived through it. And I was impressed with the questions here on the board just a moment ago when you people took that test. I passed the test. I was there. So I lived through it. And it was nice hearing about some of the things that happened during those days. And I'll cover just a little bit of that. But you folks that scored high on the test, and I'm sure that most of you did, probably one or two that slept through the reading and didn't get to it. But it was an interesting period. So, but and I remember that. And I remember a lot of things. First of all, I remember my mother and dad. Now, both of them came from Ireland. I'm first generation here in America. Mrs. Johnson's had a tough time with that one. She's always been shot up. Mrs. Johnson is third generation. See, I'm first, her dad was second, and she's third generation, and we have fourth generation here in America. In Ireland, we go back, we can trace back to about, with some degree of authenticity back to 1616, and we find the name Dinaham was in some of the graves, if you will, in the 11th, 12th, 13th century. So we go back a long way, and I'm proud of it. Now, and that's something that maybe some of you should be doing, and I'll tell you why when I get into this a little bit later. As I said, I was born February 11th, 1919. I'm very fortunate that I've had a good memory and stayed with me all through the years. I can remember as a little child of 3 years old in 1922 playing in the sand. It was in front of a school that was being built just down the street from me. And that school later became one that I and my brothers and sisters attended. So we grew up in a nice time. The 1920s was a great time. Everybody was happy. Business was good. The work was good. People had plenty to eat, and no thought of saving. It's unfortunate the American people do not save money like those in some of the other countries do. Because after in the 1920s, I can remember too, the American people being very patriotic. We just come out of World War I, where we'd won it, and given away everything, of course, through the League of Nations. I don't know if you studied that or not, but America, and despite what a lot of people will say, America has won more wars than won just about every war they've been in, but they give it away during the peace talks. So the only land we have worthwhile is some of the islands out in the Pacific and Puerto Rico. But that's another story there. During the period that I was growing up, we used to have a lot of parades. Every holiday, Memorial Day, 4th of July, November the 11th, and each town would have its homecoming day. It was always the first day of baseball and the first day of football. There were always parades. And I can recall in the parades, especially on the three big Veterans Day, that we would see the veterans from the Civil War. Now, the Civil War, when I was a kid, had only been over for 57 years. So if you had a 20-year-old in the Civil War, he was 77 at the time, and there were a lot of Civil War veterans around, and even more veterans from Spanish-American War. So, and then, of course, you had different insurrections in the Pacific and China, and did some work in there, and the Boxer Rebellion, things like that. But we we looked up to our soldiers and honored them. And America's always been good to the soldiers. We've only had one black mark, and that was with the soldiers back from the Vietnam War. And that's starting to turn around today. Well, after 1920, the 1920s, the tail end of the 20s, we had a Black Friday. And a Black Friday that day was not a shopping day. It was a day that the stock market crashed. And the stock market in New York crashed, and there were a lot of people who lost everything they had and took the easy way out. So, had they hung around, the stock market rebounded and became even stronger than ever. But it did precede and was largely responsible for the depression that ensued. And I grew up through the Depression. In those days, in Depression, when people had no work, and there was over 25% of the wage earners out of work at that time, and those that had a job worked a short time. We were fortunate in our family. My father worked 3 days a week. He made the princely sum of 50 cents an hour. That money, he had $12 a week in wages, and then he would have, of course, some deductions from that. But my mother and dad raised 4 of us. I was the oldest, and I had a brother, Jack, and a sister, Margaret, and another one, Alice. So this was a normal family, but we were poor. Even with $12 a week, we were poor. Not as poor as a lot of people. But we didn't know we were poor. Everyone was poor, so you had no one to judge it by. So you accepted what you had. The thing about those days and being poor is that there was in our town, there was in all the smaller towns, as I understand it, there was an esprit de corps among the people, and they would help one another. You know, we didn't have unemployment compensation. We didn't have food stamps. We didn't have welfare or relief or anything of that nature. There was no federal programs to help the people that really and truly needed it. And that fell on mainly the religious organizations. The Methodist Church had the Methodist League. The Lutheran Aid Society was there. The Catholics had the Catholic Charities, or the same as the Paul Society. Then you had the Salvation Army that did yeoman work during those days. And they helped one another. FDR came along and had a lot of programs going. It was in his administration that they started the Victory Gardens. There wasn't Victory Gardens at that time, but they were called Victory Gardens when the war came along. It was just another name applied to what had been going on through the Depression years. When in a neighborhood you had, say, you had a couple of city blocks that were vacant. The local street department or somebody would get a tractor, or use of a tractor, and plow the fields, and then it would be sectioned off, and your family would have a part, your family would have a plot, your family would have a plot, your family would have a plot, my family would have a plot in this area where we grew vegetables. We grew the beans and the chard and the Brussels sprouts and carrots and beets and the like, which went on your table toward the end of summer when they were ripe. Now, we did have some theft. You always have some wise guy somewhere that would come along and either steal or rape. But believe me, they did it once. That's all. Because the punishment that they got may have been some jail time or some probation time or something like that. But they were